Namaste. So as we're moving into the last of this series, it just so happens it's on this day. It's been 7 weeks, and I congratulate all of you that are still here in this process, because we pushed some envelopes, didn't we? We looked at some old beliefs that may have been sitting there for a long time, and we didn't even know why, but they were there. And as we continue through the journey from here on, we're going to have this baseline to come back to and enhance. And as I said 18 weeks ago, as we began to change what we do, going from a spectator sport to a participatory, where you're involved in your own life making changes, because that's why we're here, is it not? Why else would we come here? If we come from a place of perfection of spirit, why would we come to this planet of lessons if we weren't here to learn one? Now, they're not always easy, right? But as we are willing to face them, as we're willing to grow into them, we begin to see some things change. Tonight, Tuesday night is going to be our last in this series. Please join us, even if you haven't been there, come on. They've been a wonderful series. I've enjoyed every one of them, and I've enjoyed everyone coming together in a way around some of these subjects. Hey, Cindy and Homer, come on in. Hey. They just traveled the whole way around the world to get here today. Probably have some jet lag, I'd imagine. We're glad you're here. You have a good time? Good. We want to see the pics. The underwater pics. So please join us if you haven't. This will be the last one for a while as we probably move into the holidays. But again, it's been a wonderful experience. So we started out 7 weeks ago with this question for you and for me. What if life is a sacred adventure? And I want to end today coming back to this question, because I hope through this that you have picked some things up that make it more sacred for you than it may have been before. But we're going to continue to move with that in context, as that is part of our theme of what we do here at Unity Harrisburg. So I'm going to share quickly a story from my life, my journey. And it was so interesting because while I had studied this book, I don't know if you've ever done that, when you study something and then you go back to it and you go, wow, how did I miss that whole section? And I had missed this whole section for whatever reason, I guess because I had blinders on. But I recognized it when I read it again that I had first read this in 1989. It was the first time I picked up the book. And the book was Unveiled Mysteries. It was written in the early 80s. It was written by this, and I've talked about him a little bit in this process. He was written by this gold mining engineer who was out in Northern California and began to get downloads from somewhere other than the world. And he wrote this book called Unveiled Mysteries, and I read it, and when I read the book, it triggered something in my soul. It was like, I don't know what this guy's even talking about at the time, and I'm sure you've all had that experience, whether you picked up a book or you went to a seminar or something. It was like there was a connection in your soul that you knew something very important was happening. And in that book was a story about David Lloyd, and David Lloyd was a son of a British officer living in India. And at 20 years old, he was told by a Swami that as you search through the world, you're going to find an older man on a big mountain in North America. And he's going to hand you a chalice. And in that chalice, you're going to drink of the elixir, and you will ascend from this lifetime in your body. Well, I was so intrigued by this story. And what happened was David Lloyd went at 50 or 60. He finally made his way to a mountain in North California. And he came upon, his original name was Gabe Ballard, and then he became known as Godfrey Ray King. That's how he wrote the series called I Am Discourse, as it was downloaded to him from an ascended master called Saint Germain. But in that story, David Lloyd found him on Mount Shasta in California. And Mount Shasta often has a cloud just like that over top of it, a lot of the time. And so I had to go to Mount Shasta. In 1990-91, I would spend 5 days in Mount Shasta. And the intention was that I was going to find the golden elixir. I wanted to drink this. And I spent 5 days climbing all over that mountain and never found the old man, and never found the golden chalice or the golden elixir. 1990, 21 years ago. And after that, I left feeling like a complete and total failure. Like, what happened? I mean, I followed everything was in the story. I actually, booked the flight, went there, spent the time, and nothing happened. I mean, I saw beautiful sunsets and sunrises and animals and people, but not what I thought was the reason that I was there. I missed this story. Was in the book we're studying the first time I went through it a couple months ago to review, but it came back home this week, I think Monday or Tuesday. But I wanted to share with you and what triggered in me, and I remember at that point in time, I remember having a conversation with the divine saying, I want that to happen for me. That was a desire in me. But listen to what David Lloyd said came back after his ascension. It's so wondrous. The cares of the infinite upon my finite being. The perfect body appeared, the perfect mind appeared, the perfect soul ruled the world of my being. A surge of infinite strength came forth, and I rose into the air. I know that it will come to you, as me, a tender reality, an infinite gift, the gift of infinity. Understand that it is the loving plan of God for each of you to be raised into the ritual of your ascension in due process of time. I knew others like me would follow in the wake of my experience and would come to realize at last the infinite lamp of God was always lit, awaiting you, awaiting the return home of the prodigal child and the lifting up of each and every individual. That struck a chord in me 21 years ago. And as I said, I did the physical work to go. My plan was it was to happen then. 21 years ago, I was ready for it. But I didn't realize now, looking back in 2021, that this particular experience and this particular teaching and being there in the energy of that mountain and everything else that occurred while I was there, I realized this has been a beacon in my life for 21 years. And when I look back and see all these things that happened, it never made sense. I realize now that it did. Because it's some part of me desired that experience back then. And when I look at what's occurred in so many different ways, I realize it's been unfolding in a way that I had no idea at that time could ever unfold. I think last week, I said the last thing in the world I ever thought I'd be is a minister. But I look back at 7 years ago when that unfolded, and it was, it's what was in front of me, it was what I was supposed to do. And that's how it just begins to show up, at least it has for me. But here's the key to it. At that point in time, I began to believe it was possible for me. Up until then, I only believed it was only possible for Jesus and some of the other avatars that was ascended. But something happened that day, something happened when I was there that said, wait a minute, if God created all of us equal, which I believe to be true, if I'm equal, then it should also occur for me, if I choose, if I wish. And that began to direct all this. So our ultimate destiny today is what I believe the Master Teacher Jesus taught. is the ascension. Now, I asked a question in the Tuesday night group, how many could raise their hand and said they already knew that they could ascend? Nobody raised their hands. Because you and I have been taught that we're not worthy enough, that we're not good enough, that it only could happen to special people. Right? Exceptions. A few people showed up on the planet of billions upon billions of humans, and they're the only ones who were good enough or worthy enough for it actually to happen. I don't believe that's true, and here's what Master Teacher Jesus said. These are his words, not what some minister or some theologian said. He said this: you and I will do even greater works than he did, ever. Why would he teach that if it wasn't true for you and true for me? I don't believe that he would. The only way he would teach that is if he believed that for you and for me. So I know this pushes a lot of envelopes because there's some really deep teaching in deep that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough. It's an exception. Only those exceptions can do this. I don't believe that that's true. And I don't believe it's true for you, and I don't believe it's true for me. I believe you and I were all created equal with Jesus, with Buddha, with Sankara, with Lao Tzu. And if they can achieve it in their lifetime, it's available to you and I. That, to me, is the ultimate destiny of where we're headed. So let's look historically at some who have ascended in the Bible. Jesus, and every one of them did it like in a fiery chariot or a ball of flame, or it was always used. Fire was what expressed how this happened, and when they disappeared in their physical body. So I don't know if this is going to happen for me in this lifetime. It really doesn't matter because I'm eternal. And when it's supposed to happen, it will. And I believe that will happen for everyone. And your mind goes, well, will it happen for Hitler? Yes. His might take a few more lifetimes to work off the karma, to reincarnate many times, to work all that off and experience the hurt that he put forth, just like you and I do. But I believe with the very DNA of me, that is where all of us end up. Home, with a capital H. Back home. Back one. Remember when the Master Teacher, Jesus said, the Father, which was his I am presence within him, the Father and I are one. He wouldn't say that if it wasn't true for him, so therefore it has to be true for you and me. We have that opportunity. We have that opportunity. Will definitely happen, I believe. We determine when, by what we do, by the choices we make, by what we think, and how we use the life force that flows through us. Here's some from the East that also ascended. So it was not a story just for Jesus. It was a story for many enlightened human beings achieved this. So my answer to the question 7 weeks ago, I believe this is a sacred adventure journey that we're on. And if your end goal is to ascend, it takes this life experience to a whole nother level, does it not? It takes what shows up, and when you begin to put it in that context, it's like, okay, there's a lesson showing up for me. What is the next step for me to deal with that? What is a better way that I can... The Course in Miracles says you have the right at all times to choose again. Right? I feel sad. Okay, I feel sad. 90 seconds of staying with that negative energy, it dissipates. And we get to choose again. And when we know that our thoughts determine our feelings, we know we can choose a little bit better thought, going back to now the Abraham work and moving up from 22 up to 1, right? A different thought takes us to a different feeling, which manifests something better in our lives. That's the lessons that we do here over and over and over again until we learn them. But many of us don't learn them, and we come from that place inside of us, that we don't like ourselves of. And that's what projects to someone else. And then we create the karma, we work it off. That's the journey of lessons over and over and over again. So we use this chart to describe, it's the best chart that I know to describe us. Us being in the physical. What is our physical body? It encapsulates our soul. It's our vehicle while we're here on the planet of lessons. The Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature, whatever you call it, above you is your true self, your perfect self. And above that is the I am presence of the God, Father, Mother God within you. Jesus called it the Father. The names don't matter. Pick the names that work for you. If one of those names triggers something negative in you from whatever, let it be. Find something that works, because it's this experience that will take you to what that goal ultimately is, I believe. So you've all seen this picture before. This is the electronic belt from the navel down. It's full with all of our fears, full of all of our angers, full of our karmic debt, full of our beliefs that are not true. Carl Jung, which was a very spiritual man, called this your shadow self. We all have it. In our shadow self are the things we don't like about ourselves. It's the things we don't want to ever have anyone else see. Right? So what it creates then is this duality within ourselves. We have the shadow self of all the things we don't like about ourselves and we don't want anyone to see. And then what do is we create a persona, a mask, that we show forth to the world with the things we like about ourselves and that we think everyone else will like about us. What happens when you create a shadow self and a persona? Are you whole? You're duality. You're existing in duality, which doesn't allow you ever to become one with Source or Father, Mother, God, or whatever word that you want to use. So the work that we've been doing for 6 weeks up until now is learning how to deal with the shadow self. And we've had processes after processes we've used. All of those are now in your spiritual toolbox. When something shows up, you now have a tool to begin to clean that shadow self. Carl Jung said this, and many others highly enlightened beings. Until we deal with our shadow self and come to grips with it, we will never, ever get to wholeness. And what we've learned over the last couple of weeks is we'll continue to return to the planet of lessons until we learn how to release our shadow self. Those of you who have coached with me, I have a different name for it. I call it Pandora's box. It's that box within us that we keep a lock on so we don't want it ever, ever to come forward. Because, oh my God, what would people think if they really saw what I was thinking? What would they think of me? Right? I'm really glad no one can read minds. Guess what? They don't have to. Because what's going on inside of your mind is showing up in your life. Everything in the exterior is showing up what's going on in the interior. But this is the work that we have to do. That's why you start hearing me talk about this as a house of healing. That's what Unity of Harrisburg is becoming. A place where we can honestly open up, like on Tuesday nights, about the things that, I mean, we've had some people that opened up Pandora's box a little. Now, they may have shut it real quick. Well, just let them see a little. Shut it. But that's healing. That's the journey. And that's, all of us get to do this. Me included, especially. And everyone else does too. Except they may not be conscious yet. They may still be stuffing Pandora's box, because denial is not healing. Denial is stuffing more anger, stuffing more rage, stuffing more depression, stuffing whatever you're judging anyone else with, you are judging you. Because I only show up in your life as a mirror, and you show up as a mirror for me. And when we get through Pandora's box, when we deal with the shadow self, guess what's at the bottom of Pandora's box? A mirror to begin to see your true self. That's the spiritual journey. It's the only way. If you remember what Carl Jung said, I've shared this with you many times, and it's what transformed my life. One of those. He said very late in his life, he said, I've been working as one of the premier psychiatrists in the world, right? Father of psychology, they say. And he said, one thing I've learned, that any human being over 35 years old will never make a permanent change unless they have a true, authentic, spiritual experience. Now, Jesus 2,000 years ago taught exactly what Carl Jung found. He said you have to be born again. That's how that term came about. You have to go from being a human being to born of spirit. Well, born of spirit is this work, releasing the shadow. You know, it's interesting. I had often thought back in the day when it's like when you start getting connected with unconditional love, you know, princesses and princes on white horses would show up, and bluebirds would fly, and rainbows and unicorns would show up. No, it's about becoming a coal miner. It's going into the muck and bringing light into the places where you and I don't want anyone ever to see. And that's true healing. And it's the only way we can heal that will last. So here's what eventually it looks like. As we clean that shadow self and doing the work that we've done, and you're going to see we talk about this over and over again, we will get to the place where we will begin to become one with the Christ consciousness above us, our true self. And the duality of shadow and persona disappear. And nothing begins to come through except Christ consciousness of Buddha nature, our true self. So one of the keys to getting there is balancing the threefold flame within us. We've been talking about that now for 7 weeks. It's that flame within our heart secret chamber. And it has 3 flames. One is blue for the power. One is gold or yellow for wisdom. And one is pink for love. Almost every human being is out of balance within themselves. You might be one. You also know people who the pink flame is way high. They just love. That's a good thing, but it also has another side. If it's out of proportion, you can find love in all the wrong places, right? We all know what that. I mean, even wrote country songs about it. Or you can have someone who has a very high yellow flame, wisdom. These are your people in books all the time, and they've got it figured out, and I don't need to invest anymore because, man, I got this figured out, and I read all the books, and I got all the quotes. Wisdom is high. Wisdom is good. We all need wisdom. But if it's out of balance with love, it gets cold. It gets sarcastic. It gets very judgmental of others and sets us apart in a superior way. As now, I read 22 books on spirituality, and they only read 8. Right? It doesn't help. It doesn't work. And finally, the same with the blue and the power. All set. So what we're going to do is we're talking more and more, we get into the experience of it. We're actually going to do the experience of balancing the threefold flame. All right? Let's just take a moment and breathe. And if you can, visualize that in your secret heart. The blue and the gold and the pink flames. And the idea is to balance those. Allow them to come in sync. Let's do this together. In the name of the beloved, mighty, victorious presence of God, I am in me, my very own beloved Holy Christ self, and Holy Christ selves of all mankind, I decree. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Beloved, I am. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Take thy command. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Magnify it each hour. And balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Balance the threefold flame in me. Love, wisdom, and power. And in full faith, I accept this manifest, manifest, manifest. And in full faith, I accept this manifest, manifest, manifest. And in full faith, I accept this manifest, manifest, manifest. Right here and now, with full power, eternally sustained, all powerfully active, ever expanding and world enfolding until all are wholly ascended in the light and free. Beloved I am, beloved I am, beloved I am. Oh. Namaste. So I share that with you today, as you're going to see, it's one of the requirements as we move forward, if you want to move forward. And it's a choice you can make, or not. But I can only share with you what I've experienced, and I've watched what begins to happen as you work through this process. It's available. We also have it if you want to get it in writing, and it'll now be available on the video. And you'll see at the very end of this talk why this is so important. So the other thing the Master Teacher said is put this mind in you. So as we work the heart and get that in alignment and balanced, we have still the mind, right? So we can have closed mind, which means closed heart. Or we can have an open mind, which means open heart. They don't work in reverse. It's either one or the other. And as we learn to open our hearts, it also allows us to begin to open our minds, and vice versa. As we begin to open our minds and embrace some things that might be new, it may be different, but feel what you feel in your heart and say, wow, that's working for me, or this isn't working for me, or we've been doing that for 20 years, and that doesn't work anymore for me. That's your choice. You get to do that. But I want you to become more and more aware as open or closed your mind then so is your heart, or vice versa. Either one, you can work from either end, but both are as important as we move forward to find that balance, to be able to get to the goal that we're talking about. So how do we prepare for this? Well, we've been given some instructions. You know, the Master Teacher Jesus said, seek first the kingdom of God. I put the word consciousness in there. For me, it works better. Again, for you, put what word worked for you. Seek first the consciousness of God. What is the consciousness of God? Well, it starts with unconditional love, does it not? Divine love is the force to create the universe. So if that becomes your go-to, if that's what you're working on, we can only take in at the level we love unconditionally ourselves. And if we're shut down in our heart space, if we're shut down in love, then we cannot receive love. We'll only receive to the level we can love ourselves. If you remember what Jesus said, there was 2 commandments, right? Love God with everything you got, and love your neighbor as yourself. That as yourself gets lost. It has to start there. If you don't unconditionally love yourself, you can't love anyone else because you have nothing to give. and you're going to be in judgment and criticism and all those things that we see all over the world. Second is fill our minds with the wisdom of God. And this is part of this balancing of the flame, right? Power, wisdom, love. And for me, I see it as wisdom and love needs to become balanced first. And then we get more of the spiritual power. And the spiritual powers is when we start seeing miracles showing up in our lives like we are seeing around here. And folks are watching happen in their own lives as healings happen in such depth. That's when the power starts to show up. And I'm not talking about power of some, superficial thing that you do some affirmations with. I'm talking about true, real spiritual power. And we're watching people's lives be transformed from something of struggle and pain and ugliness to something very beautiful and joyful. Unconditional love ourselves. Those are the three things that get started. We've talked about this now for 7 weeks. Right? We ascend daily. Every day, the work that you do or do not do determines what's going to end up at the end of this lifetime for you. There's no judgment here. There's no condemnation. You know what you do every day. You know what your thoughts are. You know who you judge or don't judge. You know who you love or don't love. You know if you're in peace or not, or rage. Those are your decisions making every day. We ascend every day by opening up to the process, keeping our heart and minds open to what might be new. That's the process. And wherever we end up at the end of this physical lifetime is where we end up, because my belief is we get to come back and keep going until we achieve what the ultimate goal is, which makes this a sacred adventure. And that's to ascend, go back to spirit, and never have to come back again. You and I have that power. We have the ability because we've been created with free will choice. We get to choose every second of every day whether we're doing this or we're not, or we're going backwards. So there's 2 types of ascension in the book. And I really like this because it helps. Because the experience I had, as I said when I began this 21 years ago, was I was a failure when I went to Mount Shasta. I didn't know this, that there's 2 forms of ascension then. There's one called the physical ascension, and it's when you've balanced 95% of your karma or more. Very rare. Most people never achieve it in a lifetime that they're in. Most difficult, and it's kind of happens for the avatars. The list that I had up there. Enoch and Elijah and Jesus and Buddha and Krishna. But what's so good about this is there's also another way, and there's another way for you and I, and that's the way I've called ascending from inner levels. And this is, again, what I said at the very beginning of this series. This is where you got to open your mind and say, I'm willing to look at something different. If it doesn't work for me, fine. You don't have to criticize it, just set it down. But for me, it's the only thing I was able to make sense of why I'm here and what I'm here to do. And this is more common, and they talk in the book about this, that we are assisted by ascended masters and angels, those who have gone before us. Jesus said that, I'm a way shower. And I go back to the Father, there's many mansions, and I will show you the way. Follow my example, and I'll get you there, is what he said. Now, I know that's not what the theologians say today, but that's what he actually did say. So this is the only thing I could find that made sense for me in the context of all this. Now, this is an artist's rendition of the Ascension Temple. It's in the etheric realm above Egypt. I don't know if it exists or not. I haven't been there that I know of consciously, but the teaching is in here is that if you do want to attend there, all you have to do is, as you're falling asleep, is ask to go. And you'll be guided during sleep to actually go there and be instructed. Now, I have asked, but I've yet to come back with a dream that says I was there. I ask every night to go there. Whether I have ever been there or not, I don't have a conscious recollection, but I hope I have, because there's some incredible teaching there and training according to them. And it's available to each and every one. The only thing you have to do is ask, take me there. Take me to the Ascension Temple and let me learn what I need to learn so I can complete my lessons in this lifetime. Now, I come from a belief system that God is all. Well, this is not outside the realm of all for me. Now, I know other people's belief in God is less than that. And that's okay. I'm not being critical at all. But for me, I was like, yeah, I can see where that happens. And I've had so many experiences in my life similar to that, but not this one particular that I can remember. So I open it to you. If it's something of interest, ask. Try it tonight. Just as you're falling asleep and say, hey, I'd like to go there. Take me there. And see what happens. Okay? So these are the instructions we're given for the inner ascension. Number one, balance your threefold flame. That's why I provided that decree today. You have that ability now to do that on a daily basis. You saw how long it takes, and you begin to have a spiritual experience of balancing that flame within the inner chamber of your heart. Number two is fulfill your divine plan. I've talked about this. They call it Dharma in the East. We've talked about it for a long time. And we had this breakthrough on Tuesday night when someone asked, well, I don't know what it is. How do I find out? I gave a really, really powerful answer. Ask. It's the only answer there is. Ask. I can't tell you. No one can tell you. But ask. And that's the command. Ask, believe you'll receive it. But if you don't know what your divine plan is at this point in time of your life, you have not been asking, I'm telling you. Because if you were asking, you would know. So ask. And the third is to balance 51% of your karma. That's a lot better than 95. It's doable for every one of us here. As they say, anyone who wants can start on this path, on this plan right now, and that will be the end goal for you. I don't know that I can promise that, but I will promise you this: if it happens to me, somehow I'll come back and tell you. I don't know how you do that. But it's up to you, because you got free will, you got choice. You can determine if this is important for you or it's not. You can determine in your mind that it's complete hogwash and walk away. That's cool. That's up to you. But I can tell you, for someone who's been working on this for 21 years, I have watched miracles happen in my life. And I watch them continue to happen every day. And I'm so incredibly grateful that I've learned how to let go of some of my shadow self. I have work to do. We all do. And here's how I know. You would not be here if your lesson was finished. Right? So all of us are equal. We're all in this place together. We all have lessons to learn. We all have things to choose to make ourselves better, to get to another place. And that's the journey here. That's why it's called the planet of lessons. And you and I get to learn them, or we get to relearn them, relearn them, relearn them, relearn them. Keep learning the lesson till you get it and move on. No different for you, no different for me, no different than any of the 8.5 billion people on the planet. So if your life goal, and this does make sense to you, as the teaching here in this book is, it happens in 2 stages. Step 1 is you become one with the Christ consciousness of Buddha nature. You and I have been talking about this for 4 years, right? But we have practical tools now on how to do that. We have processes, a spiritual process, that allow us to do more and more of that. But what we never have really been clear in the teaching, even in unity, is that we have to do the shadow work first. We got to clean that electronic belt. Because if you don't, it keeps coming back. Those old beliefs, those old traumas, those wounds, those judgments all that karma keeps coming back and back and taking you down the path you don't want to go. And it will always override your willpower to take you there. Always. It always does. So that's step one. Step two is then the ascension to the next and becoming one with the Father. Or in our case, the words we're using here is the I am presence. Right back to the chart of our divine self. So first step, as we begin to clean the shadow, we begin to have different thoughts and different emotions. We begin to manifest in a different way in life. And that allows us to begin to come one with our true self. Then the next step is the ascension step, where it will take you to a place in oneness with the I am presence within you. So we're going to finish up today. I'm going to